All right, we're about to start. Failure accomplished. Paul, Elam, an ear for men. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you just got done watching the Red Pill movie last night?
Yes, I did. Wait a minute. Today's Sunday. I actually watched it Friday night.
Were you in New York?
Yes, I was.
Oh, cool. How did it go?
It was amazing.
Awesome.
No fire alarms were pulled.
No fire alarms were pulled, except perhaps in the minds of the audience. It was a very well done movie. All the fear that people had, and understandable fear too, with the way that the men's movement and MGTOW have been treated by media. A lot of people thought the sky was going to fall in, that it was just another hit piece waiting to happen. The only thing that got hit was feminism by a 44 caliber bullet right between the eyes.
I think we could agree that is good to take a little knock at feminism, and the thing is, like, I have a feminist girlfriend and she complains like, oh well, why do you, the feminism I'm attacking is this extreme form of feminism. Would you agree you're after that, or are you just like, get back into the kitchen?
Well, there's two answers to that. One of them is I actually am a little bit wary of the shape shifting. We got some of that from the audience during the Q&A, but that's not the feminism for me. Well, the feminism that I'm talking about and that I have issues with is the feminism that is creating all these crazy laws and policies and social narratives that are harming people. I know that there are good, well-meaning feminists out there, people that believe in equality. I know they exist, but they aren't the ones at the UN. They aren't the ones writing laws like VAWA. They aren't the one writing laws like Yes Mean Yes. And they aren't the one prosecuting what amounts to witch hunts on college campuses of young men. So for all those good feminists out there, you know, you have my support. I have nothing against you, but I'm dealing with feminists that have power.
But most feminists, you know, the ones that are the good feminists, the ones who I say about 95% of all feminists out there have about no idea what the career feminists are actually up to. And the career feminists would try to get the nice feminists to be not nice if they could, if they get them alone. Yeah. So.
Well, that's a problem. Most feminists' problem is that they don't understand feminism.
Yeah.
Boons in the chat ask, were there any SJWs or feminists at the...
Well, Michael Kimmel was there.
Okay.
And a couple of his supporters was with him. There was a feminist journalist in the audience, at least one. I assumed that there were more feminists there. It was largely a men's movement crowd, though.
So they weren't able to bully you or anything?
No, there was no bullying. There was no attempted bullying. As a matter of fact, the lamest thing that happened there was during the Q&A when Michael Kimmel, the author of Guyland and Angry White Men, and the guy who has Gloria Steineman and Carol Gilligan and all manner of radical feminists heading up his supposed men's studies program, after watching the movie, which the audience was laughing at Kimmel during the movie, after the movie was over, and he was like, oh no, I'm all about what you guys are about.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, oh man, it was pathetic. And then he ended up blaming, he said, well, it's really not men, the problem is white people.
Oh, for fuck. Oh god. Oh,
real quick, what are your thoughts on Ben and Jerry's turning very pro Black Lives Matter in this issue?
Disappointed but not surprised.
What I found out about it is, like, I'm a Hispanic guy, right? Didn't see any Hispanics on their board. Like, you know, 10 people on the board, all white people, and no black people at all. So should I, as a company that, you know, is sympathetic for, you know, the Black Lives Matter cause and teaching you about systematic racism, shouldn't they have some people step down and, you know, put some color in their board?
Well, you mean, should they actually walk what they talk?
Exactly.
No, I doubt that's going to happen. But no, it's disappointing to me that anybody would support Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, for sure.
oh, I had a question about was it? Oh, so Paul, before I forget this, I went to a screening at my mother's community last night. My mother lives in a kind of a co-op-y thing where there's many households and they have a big common space and they sometimes show movies. So they had a screening of a movie which I'm sure you're familiar with and I doubt you like at all. What is it? The Mask That You Live In or whatever? Do you know?
Yeah, that came up at last night too.
Oh yeah,
Came up too.
because that seems to be sort of more of Michael Kimmel's style. And I had actually seen the film before when I first got into men's rights stuff. When I was just at the tip of the iceberg, so I didn't know to be as critical of it as I ended up. And I ended up watching the Honey Badgers react to it and see some of their input. So when the movie was over, I was very quick to be able to point out some major flaws. Like within the first 5 minutes of the movie, this woman who's supposed to be a doctor says, she says, masculinity is not an organic construct. It doesn't happen naturally. It's just the rejection of all that which is feminine. And I raised my hand very early on in the discussion and I said, that statement is deeply offensive to me. Like, that is a very offensive thing to say. And all the men in the room totally agreed. So I kind of got people on board and I told them this is not actually a men and boys movie. This is a feminist movie about men and boys. And so people understood what I was saying. One father in particular was very, very concerned with his young boy who's 8, and he's starting to see signs of despair and growing pains in his young boy. And he was really not happy with the movie. He did not feel like the film, gave him any answers. And so I told him that I was going to be in a stream with you, and I was wondering what your advice about child rearing, if there's any good books. He's not necessarily interested in being a full-blown MRA and,
Sure.
having an ideological, but he just wants to have some good advice about how to raise his young boy.
Well, you certainly don't have to be a full-blown MRA or even a personal MRI. I think you have to use some common sense,
Yeah.
Which is noticeably lacking in feminist literature. And that movie is an example. By the way, the woman, I forget her name, that made that movie, she's not even a filmmaker. She's a gender studies advocate that hired a bunch of people that knew how to operate a camera and made a movie.
Yeah.
Expressing her viewpoints. But that is a tough question for both parents. It's not just fathers, it's mothers too. What do you do when you start seeing the unavoidable sense of depression when young boys are going to schools and it's all girl power and there is a lot of demonization of boys, there is a lot of set-asides for girls, there is movies like The Mask You Live In, telling young boys, what is Karen Strawn brought up at the Q&A in New York. What on earth is a word like toxic masculinity supposed to mean to an 8-year-old boy?
Yeah.
These sort of things. And so how do you combat that? Well, one of the things that parents, I think, have to be willing to do is to sit down and tell their children that the world is lying to them, both boys and girls, about who they are. And that their teachers can't necessarily be trusted. I mean, and that seems like a terrible message to have to send, but it's the only one I can recommend because that's what's happening. They're being lied to about who they are. They're being demonized. And they need parents that are willing to set them down and say, no, that's not true. You know something? Your masculinity, your being a boy is a good thing. And the people who tell you otherwise have problems, psychological problems. It may not be their fault, but you don't have to listen to them.
It's a real shame that people don't let kids just be kids. And today I was watching a video by Blair White on her opinion on children going through, being trans or whatever. And she was saying that, it's not a good idea to ever have that happen because at such a young age, you don't know pretty much anything,
Right. I can imagine how difficult it is for trans people to go through that transition as adults. I mean, can you imagine going through a process where you're identified as one sex, and then sometime later down the road, it's the exact opposite. To me, that's mind-blowing. And to put that on a child?
Just because you live in a shitty house and the house across the street looks nicer and you cross the street doesn't mean that your life is going to get better.
No, it doesn't. Rich people commit suicide all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is the precise opposite of the old conservative mindset of demonizing young boys who were more feminine, demonizing femininity. We used to have that in this country. Yep. We used to have...
we still do to a degree.
It still crops up from time to time. You have very right-leaning parents who despise their children's behavior because it doesn't conform to their personal beliefs, and this is exactly the same. It's just the other side of that same pendulum.
I think, though, that there is one difference in it, though, that concerns me even more. I mean, it is bad enough. And even today, one of the most common, and I put this in scare quotes, insults that I get is being called a fag, that I must be gay, as though I'm supposed to be insulted by that. I mean, so there is stuff out there like that is still very robust in certain segments of our society. But at least when that was the mainstay, young men had a place to retreat to where they felt like they could actually be themselves and belong. And now that's being taken away.
Talking about fags, did we ever talk that the two guys we're talking to are gay?
Yeah, I'm gay, and so is our other guest, St. Clair. So yeah, we are. We are gays. Well, I would consider myself.
I would say that I think Prince is fully homosexual. I'm bisexual with a preference for males.
Huh.
I'm fully homosexual. So yeah. About the word fag being brought up. Paul, have you heard much about the talk? This is one of my pet peeves. I made my channel largely because I got upset by feminist overreach within the gay male community. They basically have tried to colonize and basically perform hostile takeovers of certain gay male-oriented spaces. And that was very upsetting to me. And one of the things that they've tried to do, which I imagine you've heard of, but I would like to hear your opinion, is that they try to say that all homophobia is rooted in misogyny, which is just not true. And I find it deeply offensive.
Oh, of course. Well, it's an insane notion. One, let me plug a book by one of our gay writers from A Voice for Men. It's a short book called Escaping the Fag End of Feminism by Matthew
I've heard of it.
Lye.
I have not gotten it yet, but I've heard of it. So yeah,
it is a blistering good read. One, he goes by Andy Bob on the side. His name is Matthew Lye. He is utterly fucking brilliant. And he totally destroys all of those arguments that you're talking about. That point, I've made the point for years. The reason that we have homophobia, the reason that we have this hatred that seems to be ingrained in a certain segment of humanity for gay men, is because of misandry, not misogyny. It's because gay men are free of the burdens that are imposed on straight men. That they're of not as much utility to women as our culture would like men to be, and therefore seen as useless. I think that drives a lot of it.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason feminists hate gay men is because they know that we cannot be brainwashed by them. There's this funny little paradox that comes up when a lot of the same feminists who are the type that would say that gay men are that all homophobia is rooted in misogyny will also say that sometimes gay men are even more misogynistic than straight men, which is also completely untrue. If those two things are true, that would mean that gay men are even more homophobic than straight men, because which I think is hilarious.
And look at the insulting way. I mean, the feminists don't have exactly a great history of being kind to gay men, and that continues to this day. It wasn't that long ago that Rose McGowan said that all gay men have accomplished is being able to sit on top of a parade float in orange Speedos doing MDMA.
She said she's not
entirely wrong.
No, she did say some nasty stuff, and she is I don't think she's a particularly nice person, but she did actually give a lengthy apology to the gay community. She was just frustrated about a specific event. I don't think she's a very nice person. I think she said some bad things, but she actually is, I would consider her a pretty decent gay ally overall. They just underreported her apology and overreported the nasty things she said, in my opinion.
Well, I'm glad you informed me of that, because I've been hating on her for a while.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't you hate that when that happens, where you get corrected on something like that?
Yeah,
and like,
I do.
now I don't have a reason to hate them.
But I'm not a feminist, so I have to eat that stuff and deal with it when it happens.
It's unfortunate what happened with Rose is a lot of her bad press comes from, she was actually blacklisted in Hollywood for 5 years or so, and then I don't know how she got out of it, but there, you know, she was in a few movies, you know, like Jawbreaker and stuff, and then you didn't see her for 5 years, and then all of a sudden over the past 2 years she kind of reemerged as a little bit of a outsider artist, and she has this weird esoteric career, and she's made some music and stuff, and it was because she was blacklisted. So I think that media still is trying to smear her to a certain degree for whatever reason she got blacklisted.
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
Paul,
whatever the reasons, I do hope that Ms. McGowan has gotten the message that gay men are worth more than just political lapdogs for feminists.
Hey,
Yeah.
Paul, so real quick in the chat, there's a question for you.
Okay.
From the Wooly Bumblebee. I think you know who she is.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay.
Where is your evidence that she stole anything? And if you have none, where's her apology?
Well, I think the evidence is in the $5,000 she collected to start the Earl Silverman Center that she did not spend on starting the Earl Silverman Center.
No, the Earl Silverman Center, he was what, a homeless man?
That what?
He was what, a homeless man?
Earl Silverman was an advocate for building domestic violence services for men and boys in Canada. He fought a decades-long struggle to get that started, and ended sadly after being bullied by a lot of the feminist establishment in Canada. He hung himself in his garage, hoping that it would bring attention to the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Christina Hansen, who goes by Wooly Bumblebee, used his name to raise money to build this center. There is a long record. I mean, it's a detailed story. There's a long record of it all over A Voice for Men for anybody who wants to read it. The evidence, show the receipt where you gave the money back, Christina.
She says she gave to Cafe because...
That wasn't her money to give to Cafe. It wasn't her money to give to Cafe. Mm-hmm. She raised that money to start the Earl Silverman Center. Then she sent it by proxy, or allegedly sent it by proxy to Cafe. I talked to the board members. Cafe is the Canadian Association for Equality. Uh-huh. And they didn't know what to do with it because it was a hot political football. But they weren't any too pleased about her dragging them into this so she could say, look, I gave the money to Cafe. Mm-hmm. She raised the money under one pretense and then went and I don't even know if she actually did it, but says that she gave it to another organization instead. That's not acting with integrity for the reasons that she raised the money. The way to have handled that money was to either start the Earl Silverman Center, which she said she was raising the money for, or to give the money back to the donors, but not just to say, oh, hey, I got your money under this line, but I've decided to do something else with it. I mean, she's admitting to you right now with the line of her questioning that she's full of shit.
Well, I guess we could have that.
Can't we just go back to hating feminists?
Yeah.
Sorry, you asked, I'll answer.
Yeah. I was just reading the chat. Thank you, Jacob.
Welcome.
geez, hard to move on from that. I actually wanted to talk to you about
Somebody
marriage.
tell a joke.
I wanted to talk to you about marriage and divorce. While I've never been married, my brother's currently going through a divorce. And what's interesting about that is that she makes more money than him, but is trying to hold on to her monies.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Have you ever been married?
One thing I really, and I got some flack for it, but when I saw the emerging and understandable movement for marriage equality in the gay rights community, I'm like, what the fuck are you people thinking?
Oh yeah, that was I was like, can we just protest the war or something? You guys, seriously?
Because I'm like, hey man, if you guys want to get in the foxhole with the rest of us, you're welcome. There's plenty of room. You'll be sorry.
I feel like I walked into something far more important than my body of knowledge would merit me. It's just what I think.
Jacob.
What?
Exactly.
Is
Make
my
a
mic
joke.
too quiet? I'm hardly getting like any bars on my green thing on the left. Right.
Hold on, I'll turn you up real quick.
I'm just asking if I can turn the gain up on my microphone. I'm just not sure.
You're fine now.
Is that better?
You're fine.
Ah, that's better.
Yeah. You got any questions for Paul, Jacob?
You're the MGTOW, right?
Am I a MGTOW? Well, that depends on who you ask. If you're,
I'm asking you.
I am MGTOW.
Okay.
I will not marry. I have been with the same partner for nearly 15 years now, in what I would call a decent functional relationship in which more than half the time we're both happy, which is about as good as it gets. I don't have any financial vulnerabilities because of my living arrangements. That the laws happen to favor, in Texas where I live, not treating this like a marriage. We are simply, in all legal definitions, roommates with separate finances, separate everything. And so there's no vulnerability for me in that way. I'm not going to be beholden to the state if we break up. But I am by virtue of the fact that I will not marry, by virtue of the fact that I believe very much in the marriage strike, in people staying away, because marriage is just, you're marrying the state. That's all you're doing. Relationships are usually, in most cases, temporary. The state is forever, and it will ruin you.
Do you think people should have kids then? I mean, obviously the answer's kind of yes, but like,
sure.
Do you think it should be like the traditional kind of, like, how do you feel about, because when I think of like, you know, sharing a financial thing, it's more because I think one parent should go out and make money and one should stay home and raise the child in most cases. That's more when sharing finances comes into play, in my opinion. Yeah. So how do you feel about that?
Well, what I would like to see, and this is where I think some people involved in MGTOW would disagree with me, is that I would like to see the system repaired. I would like to see marriage not be a gamble with the lives of the children and both the people who are invested in the marriage. I would like to see some sort of sanity return to our family courts, which now basically, rather than helping families restructure once there's a divorce, they just put the final nails in the coffin and destroy everybody involved. If we could fix that, yeah, I think people should have kids. I mean, we don't have a human race without people having that. So that's a no-brainer. Yeah. In the meantime, what I suggest to men is the same thing that a lot of gay couples do, is that you get a very ironclad, if you're a man that wants a child, get a very ironclad binding surrogate or adopt and have your child. But if you have a child in the context of a modern marriage, there is a very, very significant roll of the dice there that one day you will just be a paycheck paying for the child, that the child will be trained to hate you, and that you will never see him again. By the way, you will see that portrayed in brutal detail in the Red Pill movie. It is heartbreaking.
I think, though, that if you're homosexual, you are less likely to marry somebody who you will get sick of, somebody who you will despise eventually.
I would beg to differ, and I say that only because I lived in San Francisco during the period when marriage equality first passed, and then was overturned, and yeah, no, there's a lot of guys who are just like, wait, we can get married now. Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? Cool. We've been dating for 3 months. And there's, I actually ended up making
just the way straight people do it.
I ended up making a joke out of, there's the common lesbian joke. What does a lesbian bring on a second date? A U-Haul. After gay guys were married for a while, what does a gay guy bring on a second date? His husband.
I guess I just have a different experience than most gay men in America. Point is a little bit skewed.
So I have a very weird.
I live in a sort of center-right state. I live in Ohio, and men who are gay in Ohio, they mean it. if they fall in love with you, they mean it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a very cynical version of gay marriage and gay guys who adopt just because of the people that I've actually known. There's been a lot of guys who, the ring is just an accessory, and then you see them out at the clubs like slutting around all the time. And then guys who end up adopting like 7 kids, and it's like, what are you doing? You're like 29 years old and you're gay guys and you have 7 kids. Something is weird in your mentality. I don't know if I have a solution. It's just, but there are weird things that happen. I think gay guys need to iron out their marriage and adopting practices and get some good books written about it. And yeah.
Honestly, I feel like we have enough kids in this world.
Well, it may be true, but one of the things that I think it's important to remember is that the problem, heterosexuals start out in love, just like everybody else. I know that gay people do as well. The thing is that the person you divorce is not the same person you marry. And courts are the problem. I mean, there's natural bitterness in every breakup. And then when you take somebody who may be, prone to more bitterness than average and provide them state functionaries that will help them express that dissatisfaction, that will come back and bite gay people in the ass just like it has us.
Yeah, and I think that we have not actually gotten to, there's going to be a major wave of gay divorces that just haven't happened yet. Because I know several gay couples who are married, but I have not yet even heard about a gay couple with a divorce. So
just give it like 6 more years.
Yes, 7 years is about the average for heterosexual couples, and that also happens to coincide where most men start to reach their peak earnings level. Just call it a coincidence. But I would say whoever said that 6 more years and take a look, I'd say you're probably right.
Yeah, I can imagine. Though the joke about gay men fooling around on the side, that is very real, and I do wonder if that for men will be likely to help them stay together. The fact that monogamy, I don't think I know a gay couple that is married that is completely monogamous, besides the one that has 7 kids, because I don't see how they would have time to fool around on the side. But I do think that in a lot of gay relationships there is a guys, because they're not completely monogamous, it keeps them together longer, but that's just a personal observation. So
let's see, Wooly Bumblebee once again says because all women are just money grubbing bitches, right? Coming off that, I gotta say,
you want me to bother with that one?
Honestly, I think honestly, I think
I wanted to hit on
if they were put in the same position. If the rules were reversed,
No,
it would
I'm
be
sorry,
no
I
different.
have to. No, Christina, they're not, but you are.
I wanted to respond to there was one video you made where like you were saying that females on Facebook are attention grabbing or whatever.
Well, that isn't exactly what I said, but go ahead.
What did you say exactly?
Well, are you
I know
about
it was about you saying that they were commenting or whatever.
The one that I titled Facebook whores?
Yeah.
Well, no, these are really just sort of a, I mean, I have lots of acquaintances through Facebook, and believe it or not, many of them are women that I actually like and who are not money-grubbing whores.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about the scam artists that come onto Facebook, which they do. I mean, they're on email. People see them everywhere, where they're either, they will friend you and then try to strike up a conversation. They will have somewhat sexualized pictures of themselves. And the next thing you know, it's like, hey, I would love to come visit you. Can you send me money for a plane ticket?
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten emails from guys that were taken in by that. But that's just a class of con artist.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, it happens a lot to women too that are pretty desperate with guys overseas. Sure. Yeah.
Well, a lot of them are probably not even real photos of themselves.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of them are really just like really hairy guys and wife beaters up to their knees in beer cans. But the point really about the video was about the gullibility of men.
Mm-hmm. About gullibility with men, does it seem like a lot of men side with feminism just because, what was the term, white knighting?
Well, yeah, I think it's gynocentrism. I think that men are programmed. And by the way, I don't think gay men are any exception to this. It's just easier for them to overcome. But I think there is pressure on men across the board to be protective of women, and there always has been. That's been codified in our culture for thousands of years.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of gay male.
I think there might be a biological aspect of that.
Sure, there's plenty of gay male white knights. I come across them all the time.
And I think whoever, I'm sorry, I can't tell who's saying what, but whoever said there's biological aspect to that, I totally agree, but I'm not a rigid determinist. Biology tells me that if I'm hungry and you have a cheeseburger, that I need to pick up a rock and hit you on the head with it and take your cheeseburger and eat it. So part of what I think marks our humanity is our ability to rise above some of our programming.
Well,
we don't rise above all of it.
Well, personally, I have an incentive not to do that because we have a state.
Yes,
we have systemized aggression that will be used against us if we trespass on others. I think that's a fair enough. I think that's a fair enough reason not to do those things.
Yes, it is, but it doesn't stop a certain amount of the culture from doing it. I mean, there's always going to be people that won't be dissuaded by law or by social pressure, but generally, the social pressure is what Belfort Bax called over 100 years ago the pressure of mock heroics, that standing up for women without even paying attention to the guy's side of the story at all is a form of heroics that has mob support behind it.
You know, my boyfriend knows an awful lot about philosophy. He's very educated in it. I wish I could invite him in here. Because I think he would like to talk to you, actually.
Paul,
let me see if I can find
I'd be happy to talk to him.
Paul, I have this whole thing about heroics. This is something that I was wanting to ask you about when I was thinking about this stream. I had this whole gigantic, awful thing happen to me. One of the reasons I really started making videos was I was like, okay, I need to have a little bit more power and audience on the internet because I felt very helpless. I was attacked in this big way. Do you know who Kat Black is?
Not familiar, sorry.
Okay, well, she's a transgender black feminist who she's actually quite intelligent, but I have come to determine that she's sort of a sociopath, and I don't use that term lightly. She knows she's lying damn well, and she'll smear people, and it's really gross. So I got into this. She made an entire video about gay male misogyny. And she went so far. Okay, so there used to be this kind of rumor that gay men occasionally will touch women without their consent, and it bothers women, and gay men think it doesn't matter because they're gay, which I will concede maybe does happen a little bit, you know, even though only a very small fraction amount of the time that women touch men at gay bars, they touch us all the time. But Cat Black actually ended up making a whole video. It was like 10 minutes long with sad music about this epidemic of gay men supposedly frequently sexually assaulting women and even raping them.
Is this her?
Yes, that is her. She's a monster. Okay.
Lovely looking person.
African American, fucking racist.
Yeah. So she made this whole video about this horrible problem of gay men frequently sexually assaulting women and even raping them and getting away with it. And she knows this because of her fan mail, because women that are her fans send her accounts of this. So it's like,
empirical.
yeah. So I was like, whoa, that's totally fucked up and actually kind of a blatant smear about my community. I have been out for 20 years. I have literally never heard an actual complaint about this. Nobody has ever conflated it to sexual assault. I have taken probably hundreds of women to gay bars, and I have never heard of this. I've never seen it happen. I've been touched, you know, a lot. So I ended up getting in this big argument with her. And truthfully, if I do say so myself, I kind of mopped the floor with her. I just completely annihilated her, and I felt very proud of it. But then she started getting cagey and trying to trick me into saying stuff I wasn't wanting to, like, I wasn't talking about. I should have been aware. She ended up trying to bring up things like, well, is it sexual? Does it matter if a priest is gay, if he's molesting little boys? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not talking about a priest. I'm talking about a potential ass slap at a gay bar. Anyhow, she ended up, she got me very frustrated. And I said, an out of context, I said something like, if it was sexual assault, it probably wasn't a gay guy at a gay bar. You know, straight men can go into gay bars too. And if it was a gay guy, he probably wasn't doing it sexually. Something like that. She took an out of context screen capture of that specific post of mine, and she included my name, and she gave a caption of her own, which was blatantly lying about what I was saying. She said something to the effect of, this gay guy says it's impossible for gay men to sexually assault women. And if women complain about it, gay men will only do it more, which had nothing to do with what I was saying. It was a complete fabrication.
Well, it's a true statement.
Well, she said that was what I was saying, even though what I was saying was more along the lines of, I don't believe that this happens as much as you're claiming that it does. I think that this is a crazy thing. And it ended up getting to she forwarded my out of context quote with a lie about what my argument was to her entire 150,000 followers on Facebook, and included my actual face and name because it was on Facebook. And I ended up getting a bunch of threats and stuff from people. And so that's what I was talking, why I brought up the white knighting instinctual protection of women. But this is why I really want to bring it up. I was obviously I didn't really have a YouTube channel at that time. I maybe had like 2 videos with robot voices. I was very upset by this because I was basically, you know, almost close to doxxed. I wasn't actually doxxed, but it was my Facebook name. I brought it onto a honey badger group, and I said, you guys, this is messed up. She's trying to say that I am, you know, encouraging sexual assault of women from gay men. And that is not at all what I was saying. I was just saying that I don't think that the touching at gay bars should be considered sexual assault because it's just playful and nobody ever cares. Well, this became a big tear between the community. About half of the people were on my side and understood what I was saying, but a number of people who identify as men's rights advocates, instead of having the solution of, yeah, you're right, maybe these feminists should stop caring about, you know, the casual touching of gay men that occasionally happens because, you know, women touch gay men all the time. Instead of saying that, people told me that I should encourage gay men to press charges on the women who touched them at gay bars. And that was a very weird ideological dilemma for me because
God.
Because I was like, no, that's not what I want to happen. I'm not bringing this up because I think I'm a victim because women touch me all the time. I'm bringing this up. So what? I guess I just wanted to bring that up with you, and I am curious about what your feelings are, because I know that men's rights advocates are very concerned with females potentially being prosecuted for actual instances of sexual assault of men, and I agree with that is a problem. But yeah, I don't know, it's just such a crazy thing, and I wanted to bring that up. I don't know if I have a concise question about it.
Well, first thing I'd say is welcome to my world. I've been living there with this out of the likes of people like David Futrell for nearly a decade now. You know, the only thing you can do is live with the consequences. I mean, if you have an opinion and you say it in public, and if you have more than half a dozen people listen to your opinion, and if you have more than half of those who agree with you, somebody's going to decide to be outraged and to do exactly what happened. I think maybe just a function of my personality. I sort of enjoy that stuff. I have a masochistic streak that's I come on, bring it, do whatever you're going to do. But this is what MRAs, what MGTOWs, even PUAs to some extent, even though there's the elements of the PUA community I don't agree with, they still get treated the same way. Here's the deal: feminist to their core. And this isn't just, I mean, of course, we've got to say it. Not all feminists are like that. Yeah, whatever. Feminists don't like men. They don't like men. They don't care if you're gay. They don't like men. They want to paint you as a potential predator, and they will go to any lengths to do it. And the guys out there calling themselves MRAs that are chastising you for what you said, in my opinion, aren't MRAs. They are a brand of idiot out there.
That gives some peace to my heart that you just said that. Because
Are they not real MRAs?
Well, I hate words like real MRA as much as I hate real man, right?
Yeah. But they were not advocating for the rights of men and boys. They were not listening to what I was saying.
Yeah, they were ideologues.
Well, and it wasn't just that they were ideologues. I think that there was also a bit of white knighting that came out in them. Like they assumed the entire premise which was my whole problem. The entire premise that gay men actually really do touch women frequently at gay bars without their consent. And that entire premise is just not true. It almost never happens. And literally, if you go to gay bars, I don't know how much you have been, Paul, or how much, everybody else in this chat besides St. Clair has been. But, women just touch gay men all the time. They sit in our laps. If guys have nice muscles, they'll compliment their muscles and kind of grab them. So, and they become very comfortable. They get drunk and they.
Well, there's a little bit of that thing where a woman kind of wants to turn a gay guy straight.
Yeah, oh, yes, there is. There's a lot of that.
There definitely is, or they're just being playful and they start dancing all crazy, and women will ask gay guys to slap their ass, like they'll lean over and like kind of, but it's just playful, and I don't know, it was like these guys
I like it.
Didn't believe me when I tried to describe what the gay environment is like it was like they couldn't wrap their mind around this idea that it really was just playful, and that it wasn't.
See, I wouldn't even go through the trouble of explaining something so stupid. It's like, no, cupcake, gay men are not sexually assaulting women. They're not attracted to them sexually, so they're not sexually assaulting them.
Right. The only time I can think of that a gay man would sexually assault a woman would be maybe something involving a grudge. a personal grudge
that could
against that
possibly happen. Sure, the infinitesimal exception
Yeah.
to all things always happens, but to try to paint some sort of overbearing social issue about gay men sexually assaulting women, I mean,
It's absurd.
Yeah, you're completely correct.
Completely stupid.
Yeah, it's like oh yeah, and rabbits occasionally cannibalize each other. I bet, you know, like sure that if you know,
Maybe gay men turn straight when they're really drunk.
Yes, exactly.
well, I think a lot of feminists are literally that paranoid about male sexuality that maybe they just can't believe that not all men want to fuck them. They just maybe are so self-important.
I wonder if feminists will start
pick up and maybe talk about the book I recommended. It's only about 50 or 60 pages that Matthew Lai wrote, because he goes into this. The demonization of male sexuality by feminists is nothing new. This didn't just start. This has been going on a long time. And
have you read the publication in it was called Dangerous Trends in Feminism, and it's online. I can link it in the chat. Sorry, because it's from the 70s and it's really, really great. I'll link it in the chat. Keep going.
Yeah, please do. And if part of the discussion about this, the funny part is that there are feminists on record saying that homosexuality itself is hatred of women because you don't want to fuck them.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, along with, 1,000 other feminist theories, all you can do is, just like, what? But
did you
that's
ever,
what they believe.
Did you ever see any of what happened with Barron recently, with people saying that he's a rape apologist?
Well, he is. He's an anti-feminist.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I have been so busy with An Ear for Men, which I'd like to plug, my Ear for Men channel. It's actually much more the focus of my work than A Voice for Men these days, and it will be for a long time. But I've been so busy with that, and so busy. I just got back from New York, and I'm getting ready to go to Los Angeles and a couple of other trips. I haven't. I blew getting on this program a couple of times trying to get ready. So anyway. So my apologies for that. I'm glad to be here, but I have not been keeping up with a lot of current events.
Oh. Well, that whole thing came about because Barron made a video a while ago about this TED Talks presentation, which was making an example of this girl that, likes a guy at a party. She gets drunk. She ends up having sex with him, throws up in the hallway, and then later she ends up regretting it. And, the presenter is saying that, that's rape. Barron's defense was, Brett never raped anybody, in the sense where, he never heard no from the young lady. He may have been drunk as well. So why is, the attack directly on Brett?
His argument was he wasn't given enough information. They're not giving out enough information to conclude that it is rape.
Yeah.
He's not being apologetic.
Yeah. And like a couple of feminists on here on YouTube have accused him of being toxic, having toxic ideals. Was it?
Well, yeah, he's an anti-feminist. That is a toxic idea.
That is toxicity right there. There's your toxic masculinity. You disagree with feminism, and you have the audacity to see a difference between women's human rights and feminism.
I've heard stories of it happening to men getting really drunk and having sex with somebody, and they didn't remember a thing.
There was one story not too long ago about a young man on a college campus that was passed out drunk.
Mm-hmm.
The girl gave him a blowjob while he was unconscious, and then turned around and he got charged.
Mm-hmm.
And was expelled from college.
Hey, Paul, what is the rationale for calling Warren Farrell a rape apologist? Because I've just never heard why they even say that about him.
It was taken from an article that he wrote back in the 70s, which, by the way, just to set the record straight, Warren Farrell's not a rape apologist.
Yeah, I did not think so. Every time I've heard him talk, he sounds great.
Not at all. We joke about him being the Mr. Rogers of the men's movement. What he did was write about the issue of consent and the way that sex on dates actually happened between most men and women, which did not involve saying, "May I touch your left breast now?"
That's not how it fucking works.
Because it doesn't work that way. Verbal consent is not a part of normal human sexuality or directly verbalized consent.
One of my favorite movies is Demolition Man. Just because, so many of, and I just started noticing how so many of the things are kind of like SJW in the future. And this is like, sex is outlawed and stuff like that. But there's one scene where she asks him if he wants to have sex. And it just ends up being through like this head.
It's like a VR machine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember. That was Sandra Bullock, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny as hell. Yeah, he was all hot to go, and then like, what?
One of my favorite parts is when he starts describing different sexual acts. I think what was it, the horizontal mambo. Yeah.
A weird thing. I think I was talking to you about this before, Failure. I had a straight friend who was a bartender in New York, and he was attractive, and he could pass as gay. Like he had a sort of a metrosexual look about him, but he was straight. He would go to gay bars commonly when he would get off of work at 2 a.m. Bars would be open for another 2 hours in New York, and he would go to gay bars to get laid, because you could go there and he would seem kind of gay, and then he would find the cutest straight girl that was there with her gay male friends, and she would, get drunk and drop her guard, and then as soon as he was chatting with her after a little bit, and he would inform her that he was straight, and she'd always be like, "Let's get out of here," because he's cute. I was thinking about that, and I think now that behavior would be considered rape by a lot lot of people. The fact that
it was deceptive.
He's a man. Whenever a man has sex with a woman, it's rape.
I'm not bothered by that in the slightest.
I don't think the girls were bothered by it in the slightest. He was hot.
Yeah. That's no different than the millions of guys that overinflate their net worth in the cars they drive, so that they will be more likely to get laid. And let's be honest about it. Why are they overinflating that stuff? Because that's what women are attracted to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Why do women wear makeup and spend hours on their hair and get breasts implants and it's essentially
they want you to value them for their brain.
They had that movie, The Mask We Live In, or whatever. It was all about boys wearing a mask. It was like, women literally wear makeup. They literally kind of wear a mask. Why are we not bringing that up?
Well, yeah, I saw that movie too, and that was typical of Michael Kimmel's approach. He comes off just like he did in Guyland and Angry White Men, with this sort of feigned empathetic concern for young men, and by the time you get through, he's basically just savaged everything masculine.
Yeah, and they offer no solutions in that movie. It's all just like, well, you should be more open to emotion, and what's the solution? And then at the end, it's like every little supposed expert delivers like a 10-second soundbite, but all they really say is things like, I mean, being emotional isn't just for women. You don't have to be feminine, but it's like, okay, well, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, emotions. I mean, this is one of the things I find so outrageously crazy about feminist beliefs. If you look throughout the history of the people, the human beings who've had emotional mastery, our greatest poets, our greatest writers, our greatest artists, all of these people that really, really knew how to interpret and understand the human condition and express it, they're predominantly men and a lot of gay men. They are not predominantly women, and that's not because that we have held them back. It is because men are forced to have some sort of control over their emotion. And there's a reason for that. I mean, people, they talk about how men need to share feelings and stuff. And sure, we need to quit shaming men for expressing emotions. Absolutely. But if you want to be downright real about something, what do you think the chances are at sexual success for heterosexual men that carry Kleenex with them to the bar so that when something touching is said, they can wipe tears away?
Oh, gay guys too. Gay guys would not be into that.
No, they're going to sleep alone forever.
Also, I think I've heard you say this, Paul. Is just the thing is that feminists, claim to want to hear about male feelings because patriarchy hurts men too, except for that's not what they want. They want you to agree with them and to say that you're sad because your dad was mean to you. But if you say, hey, I'm sad because people like you, women and feminists in particular, treat me bad and that's why I'm upset right now, then they bathe in your male tears.
And they shame you.
The chat real quick. Don't worry, it's not a Wooly Bumblebee message. Real Raven says, Paul, talk about the Q&A Karen shouted at Kimmel. What is that about?
What was the last part? The Q&A and
Karen shouted at Kimmel at the Red Pill Q&A, I guess.
Shouted him down?
Yeah, that's what the chat said.
I wouldn't say Karen shouted him down. Kimmel, of course, attempted to filibuster. And Karen and I also talked over him once. I think someone else did too. But Kimmel probably said half of what was said during that Q&A. And he was the only feminist on the stage because he wouldn't shut up. But he went into the routine about patriarchy. This is why I'm really on your side, because patriarchy hurts men too. The standard feminist spiel, patriarchy, which is sort of another word for men.
Are they aware that this is not a patriarchal government or anything?
No,
they're not, because patriarchal means no woman at all.
Well. Well, the thing is, I mean, I think Jack Kamer, who's a great writer, by the way, on men's issues, a very unsung hero of the men's movement, coined a term a long time ago that I just love. And that is looking at men in government and saying they have all the powers, like looking at women in grocery stores and saying they have all the food. Men don't pass laws to benefit men.
Yeah,
we don't have a Violence Against Men's Act. We don't have WIC. That's Women, Infants, and Children. It intentionally excludes men. We don't have legislation and government actions to benefit men as a group. It's all about benefiting women or benefiting society or benefiting minorities. Some of that legislation I think is good, but to look at in the halls of power and say this is at the 0.005% of men that actually have power, and to say that represents all men, one, is crazy, and two, if you look at what those men actually do, they benefit society, they benefit women, they benefit families, but they're not there backslapping, benefiting each other. I am still waiting for my patriarchy check to arrive in the mail, and it hasn't gotten here yet.
Well, yeah, I do think that though that because of that, a lot of guys, they do trust each other to continue that legacy of protecting the family. Like they're like, okay, you're a male, and I have a lot in common with you. I trust that you're going to, pass laws that will protect my daughter and that kind of thing. But it's not, I trust you to pass laws that are going to benefit me,
Exactly. The men have an innate sense of shame about asking for much of anything on their behalf. This is one of the most silent crises we see in the modern marriage. I mean, you can read it if you look at what real estate agents do. They understand that they're not selling a home to the guy. He may be the one paying for it, but they know who the customer is when a couple shops.
I don't think there's I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that.
Jerry says he was at the Q&A and that Kimmel said men have issues, but there's no need for MRM. and he shouted at him, how can we help men without a men's movement?
Yes, that did happen. And of course, there was no answer.
Yeah, there are some people who like to fancy themselves egalitarians, and they say, I don't agree with the MRAs on everything. I don't agree with the feminists on everything. I want a third way, and it's always some sort of moral nonsense.
I'm an egalitarian, which means I agree with MRAs. I'm an egalitarian and an MRA.
Yeah, I don't self-identify as things, and the only reason I don't self-identify as things is because I feel like I'm more useful to them if I can. Like, I don't want to be held accountable for the potential negative actions of other people, but also because I just don't want a stigma. I would like to be able to go in between. I was able to give a talk at the feminist movie last night, and didn't say, hey, I'm a card-waving MRA, because that would have maybe put people off. But it's, at the same time, I would still consider myself a part of the men's movement. So.
Well, and you are.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, the label doesn't matter. If you're an egalitarian, in my opinion, if you're an egalitarian, then you're part of the greater men's movement. You may not be an MRA, you may not be MGTOW, you may be beyond any label. And you're right, the labels just don't matter. There's a men's movement, whether people want one or not.
Yeah,
right. People's perception of the thing doesn't change that thing.
Right.
I enjoyed like not being a part of anything. I ended up dragged into this because as petty as it sounds, things like feminism invading like things like video games and movies and stuff like that. It sounds petty, but that's something I enjoy. And like, why should they have more of a say than the fan base?
Yeah, they took over gay male spaces. They took over the radical fairies. The radical fairies were land owned by gay men, bought for gay men, and there was feminist hostile takeovers. And now you can go to this land or the online discussion forum based around this land and get called out for your male privilege by a straight woman. And it's disgusting. So, well,
why do you think they changed GLBT to LBGT?
Oh, probably, huh?
Yeah, I always find that funny that like lesbians talk like way more into LBGT than gays. Like, I barely ever hear any like gays talking about gay issues.
Well, and also, it's a very disgusting thing. They've monopolized the conversation, and they say that we have male privilege. There's so many ways in which gay men are persecuted more than lesbians. Like, we have exponentially several times the amount of hate crimes, much more religious persecution, denial of medical services in some states. Some states, there's still sodomy laws. Lesbians have basically none of that to deal with.
Absolutely. And I wrote about this. You can find it on A Voice for Men. I wrote an article called "The Problem with the Gay Rights Movement," and this is exactly what I'm talking about, was how the lesbian feminist element just basically moved in and took over. There was just starting to be progress on actual rights for gay men, and a lot of it got shut down.
The problem with the gay... What'd you call it, Paul?
The problem with the gay rights movement.
Okay, I will look that. And
it has a very right-wing, idiot-sounding title, but it's not.
Is it on A Voice for Men?
Yes, it is.
And it's written by you. Is it?
Yes, it is written by me. And that's one of my, I think I have a few things that I'm really proud that I accomplished. When I entered the men's movement was way back in Men's News Daily days, when the men's movement was primarily comprised of just right-wing people. And I mean right-wing in the classic Fox News sense, right? We never met a country with brown people we didn't like to bomb. The same right-wing movement that the only time they ever threatened VAWA was because it threatened to, because there were amendments to VAWA written that would have extended benefits to gay and lesbian couples, that sort of right-wing thing. And I intentionally decided that if I was going to take the initiative and put myself front and center on a men's movement, that shit had to go. And so I managed to write there and immediately alienate about half of Mike LaSalle's audience. Luckily, he didn't care too much from the beginning. I wrote an article. One of the first articles I wrote there was the question of gay marriage. How about no marriage? And I talked about. I think I used the line that heterosexual men had treated marriage with all the respect that they would give a $2 hooker, and now they're worried about gay men getting married. Come on, are you kidding me? But in starting A Voice for Men, one of the first thing I did was put out an appeal, inviting gay men to come in and make their voice a part of this movement, and because it never had been before. And I have never regretted that. We have more work to do on it, but I am glad to see more and more gay men out there talking about this and acknowledging that they've been used.
Yeah, I feel that we definitely have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I thank you very much for that. I very much appreciate it. I have a YouTube channel. Obviously, I do, and there's one video that I'd really love it if you took a look at, Paul, in particular, because I know that you've done a lot of work with abuse counseling and stuff. And I made a video called, I believe it's 9 ways that SJWs and feminists mimic abusive relationship patterns. And I talk about basically how social justice warriors and what I refer to as fourth wave feminists, which are basically blog driven and social media oriented feminists. And I have a whole video about what that is. How the patterns of behavior that they enact mostly on the internet are very, very similar to abusive relationship patterns. So I'd really like if you checked out that video.
Please send me a link. I'll be happy.
Are you on Twitter? I mean, you must be on Twitter.
Yes, I'm on Twitter, An Ear for Men.
Okay, An Ear for Men. I will get you on Twitter. I'm Prince of Queens, and I will follow you and tweet at you. So, and then send you that.
Prince, were you kind of insulted? Did you ever see that video of the Hispanic chick complaining that there wasn't enough focus on Black Lives Matter after the Orlando massacre?
Oh God, yes. Oh, she needs to. Oh, yeah. I'm not really sure the level of articulation that I can give about my anger. I can go scream into a pillow, maybe. It was so annoying. Actually, right when that happened, I got into a big flame war with a friend of mine. Okay, so with prior friend, I stopped being his friend after this. He ended up starting to go down the Black Lives Matter rabbit hole. He's mixed. He's like half black, but he's totally, I hate to use it, but he's totally privileged. He went to fucking Stanford. He lives in San Francisco. He works at like startups. He worked at the company Square, which, you know, is like the credit card running thing that goes into your phone. Yeah. So he's fucking rich. And then all of a sudden Black Lives Matter comes out. And he posts 5 times a day about Black Lives Matter. He's obviously overcompensating for the fact that he's a fucking rich kid and everybody knows it. And it got to the point where he also was complaining about white gay men, because that's another really common thing. Lesbians and gay men who aren't white are just constantly talking shit about how white gay men are just these horrible, horrible people, and they're basically even worse than white straight men. And so when that happened, I swear to God, people probably didn't even know who the victims were. The bodies were probably not even cold. All we knew was that there was a shooting. And he posted on Facebook, he says, "Stop shooting black people." And then he hashtagged Black Lives Matter, Women's Lives Matter, and like trans lives matter. And it was like he was specifically, you know, just assuming it was all about black people and trans people and women. and it was like he was specifically excluding white gay men. And then, of course, it turned out that there were some white gay men that died, but most people were Latino.
Yeah,
like the vast majority of them. And
I'm sorry, but the Middle East, ISIS,
and it was a person of color, and it was a
person
of color who did it, and the motive for the crime was simply that they were gay. It had nothing to do with the fact that these were people of color. That wasn't why the crime was committed. I got into a big argument with him, and I ended up making a meme out of him. It's that I could I could show you guys at some point. I don't know if I could find it quick enough to put it in this chat right now.
Like when I think who do Muslims
as a white cishet shitlord, I find that very offensive too.
Yeah. Well, when I think who does Muslims hate, first it's the Jews, of course, and then white people, Western white people.
Well, and the gays a little probably, and women. Hell, what? Who don't they hate?
Dogs. They hate dogs too.
Yeah,
because dogs are haram. Yeah. Well, sorry to fuck up the flow. All right.
Truth will do that to you.
Yeah.
Wait, I wonder if I can find that meme I made out of him, because you have to see what he looks like, because it's extra funny. He's just such a little. I found it.
And I hate to interrupt at this point, guys, but I have a 5:30 appointment.
Not a problem.
Okay, so just check out this meme, and then I demand nothing else of you.
You got it.
Pop it up.
So I'm screen share. Yeah.
That's him?
Yeah. Islamic person of color massacres 50 queer people, mostly Latino men. Blames the white male patriarchy for discrimination against black people and women.
Oh, please tweet that to me so that I can retweet it.
Okay, I will. Yeah, and people, the other thing was that people were like, oh my God, I hate lesbians. Lesbians are so, I'm like, no, that's actually a gay male is the sad part. Like, it's not even a lesbian.
Spencer came right as Paul was walking out.
Isn't it ironic that Spencer comes in the end?
Well, I wish I could stay longer, but I've got other commitments. It's been a real pleasure.
Paul, it was really nice to chat with you. I'm honored to have been in this stream with you.
Paul,
no problem, Paul. Next time I'll get you in here with Wooly Bumblebee, and you could destroy my channel. All right?
Okay, we'll have fun with that. Meantime, please, if you would, whoever's listening, visit An Ear for Men on YouTube and check out some of the videos there. I think that if you enjoyed this conversation, you will find those videos quite appealing.
Yeah, check him out. He's in the description, guys. Thank you for passing by, Paul.
Thank you. You guys take care. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.